And we are rolling.
Ahlan wa sahlan bikum, and welcome back to my kitchen and Sahtein. Today we are going into the world of dough. You may have had from me before or recognize the savory pies that we have in a lot of Arabic food. We make spinach pies, meat pies, potato pies, cheese pies, all different sorts of things. And all of them come from this same very basic, very useful, versatile dough recipe. It's also the same dough that I use to make menaish. After much trial and error with different dough recipes, this one has not failed me once. I have made it in different kinds of climates and conditions. I've made it where I bought the wrong flour one time and it still turned out perfectly. It really is very forgiving. It's a perfect basic dough recipe with which you can make so many different things. I did this dough recipe in a previous video just about menaish, but today we're going to make it and just really go deep into the dough and why all these different elements do what they do. I'm really excited for more people to get their hands in a dough and make things and not be afraid to just try and go for it. The one way to learn how bread works and to learn how to work with it is to just try it and do it yourself. Let's begin. So for this dough, I'm using two different types of flour. I have all-purpose and bread flour. We're gonna start with 2.5 cups of bread flour to 1 cup of all-purpose flour and sift it together in a bowl. Make sure to pat your flour down well. It's okay if it's not perfectly exact. Again, this dough is really, really forgiving. You can do this without sifting the flour, but when you sift, it just ensures that there's no lumps, and that's just helpful in getting the dough together. Now, I hear you saying that you don't necessarily want to buy two different types of flour. You can totally do this with just all-purpose flour, but the texture will be a little bit different. So just know that. Bread flour has a higher protein content in it, so it helps the bread to be a little more bready and have a little bit more body to it. I made menaish for my family this summer using this dough recipe, and I went to buy bread flour from the supermarket and everything's in Danish and I don't know what anything says, and I bought what I thought was bread flour and it turned out to be some special seeded flour with all these oats and seeds and things in it. I sifted out a bunch of the seeds and I still used it and it turned out great. You could, even if you buy the wrong type of flour, this will work. Look at this little mountain of flour. It's like I wanna summit this. About a tablespoon of salt, roughly, and 1.5 tablespoons of sugar. You can see me, I'm just doing it by eye, like about, cool. And then I like to add about a tablespoon, maybe a little bit more of powdered milk, dry milk powder. This is an ingredient that you can totally leave out and make this completely vegan. I find that when you add this, it just gives a really nice texture to the dough, makes it feel a little bit softer. You could also add a little bit of liquid milk. You could use regular milk or oat milk if you want, and just substitute a little bit of that liquid for the water that we're gonna use. The only reason I keep this ingredient in the house is for this dough. It really does add something nice. So if you're not vegan, I encourage you to try it. I have my active dry yeast. We're going to be using this bottled stuff. You can use 1 packet if you like. You don't have to get instant yeast, but active dry yeast is good. So I have about a tablespoon of active dry yeast in here. And in here I have 1 1/3 cups of lukewarm water. So I'm just gonna put a little bit of the water with the yeast so that it can start to activate before we mix it into the dough. And then we can just leave that to do its thing. I'm gonna add 1/3 cup of oil to the dough. I'm using grapeseed oil. I also use sunflower oil sometimes. We use that in Amman. I really encourage you to not use vegetable or canola oil. It's a mix of a lot of different oils made very cheaply. I much prefer my vegetable oil to be sourced from one thing. We can just add that directly in. We're gonna begin mixing the dough with our hands, slowly incorporating the water. I think the rings have to come off for this one. So I'm gonna have just one hand in the dough and the other hand putting water in. We're just gonna keep it moving. So you can do this with a machine, but I really encourage you to get in the dough with your hands and become friends with it. Because the beautiful thing about dough is that it is a living thing. It's always different. You really wanna get your hands in there and understand how it's coming together. And then I can start adding my yeast water as well. So I'm just moving it around and then squishing it into the parts that are still floury, and just take your time. and it will get there, and eventually you will have a beautiful dough ball. If you feel that you need just a tiny bit more water, add it, but you don't want this to be too wet, so really give it a chance to come together before you do that. So once it's kind of come together and it's become a dough, I'm gonna put a little bit of flour on my surface here. Then we can just pull the dough out and just give it a little bit of kneading time. You don't need to knead it a lot because you don't want to overwork it, but we just want it to become nice and springy so that it feels like it kind of has a bit of a life of its own. You know, it's kind of becoming elasticy. We want the dough, you want to push it back and for it to kind of spring back on its own. That's how you know it's a good situation. We're just gonna put a little bit of oil in here. You don't want to use olive oil in the dough because it doesn't really do well with the texture. You want to use a high heat vegetable oil, like grapeseed, like sunflower oil. Put our nice little friend here, place it in the bottom. We will cover it with a nice blanket and keep it in a warm, dry, dark place where it's not gonna get any kind of draft or get bothered, and leave it for about 1 to 1.5 hours until it doubles in size. I sometimes like to leave mine in an oven that's been turned off because it's just a good space for it and it's already a little bit warm in there, so let's put it to bed, yes? Woo. And I will see you in an hour and a half. And we're back. Let's check on the dough. It's been about an hour and a half, almost 2 hours. Sometimes they take a little longer, sometimes they take a little shorter, but let's check it out. Yes, yes. So our dough has doubled in size. It's looking real cute. This is always the point in which my mom would call me into the kitchen so that I could punch the dough down. So the first thing we're gonna do is punch the dough. Let some of that air out. I love doing that. And pull it out. Oh, it's perfect. At this point, you could take a piece, roll it, make pizza out of it. For my purposes, I'm going to take little balls like this. Oh, it's perfect. And just roll them. And you don't want to knead them really too much or anything. You just want to make them look kind of nice. It can be whatever size you want, depends on what size pies you're gonna make. But we're gonna just make these and keep them nice and covered with a little blanket. Putting this dough together in the first place is super, super easy. Once you do it a few times, it becomes really quick and brainless. At this point, you also can take your dough, wrap it in cling film, put it in the fridge, and then take it out, bring it up to room temperature another day, and use it again. Letting these dough balls rest a bit, because once I pull them out of this dough, they're gonna rise a little bit more on their own. I'll make a few smaller ones too, just to show you. Sometimes I even make them really, really small. Now this amount of dough could make you about 12-ish 10-centimeter flat pies. Our lovely dough balls here, ready to be made into a million different things. While I'm not using them, I'm gonna cover them up and then take them out as I make things with them. When you wanna use these, you can just take one, roll it out. See how perfectly springy and alive it is? It's alive. The dough is alive. It's a friend. Roll it out to maybe about this thick. And at this point, you can put things on top of it, or you can put things inside of it, stuff it closed. I like to bake these at about 400 degrees for 10, 15 minutes max. You just want to really watch them until they can turn a golden color. And then you're good. In my next series of videos, I'm gonna show you how I like to make the 3 classic Muajannat: spinach, meat, and potato pies. They're all so delicious, and I'm excited to share them with you. But please, if there's something lovely and creative that you decided to do with this dough, please share it with me. One time I made pies with this and I stuffed it with like a sweet potato and jalapeno and a little bit of feta cheese situation. It was really, really good. It is really a gift that keeps on giving to get your hands in dough and really get used to working with bread. You know, it brings it back to the very beginnings of human cooking to do something like this from nothing, create beautiful sustenance. Let me know if there's any other recipes that you would really like me to tackle or things in the kitchen you'd like me to talk about. I love your feedback very, very much. If you want to see more of my face doing stuff like this, you can hit the subscribe button. You can hit the notification bell if you want to actually know when I upload new videos. Yeah, that's all. I appreciate you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for hanging out with me and giving me a space to do this. I love it. I really do. See you guys next time when I teach you how to do more with this dough.